The medical bay of Outpost 17 was quiet. Too quiet for a night after a battle that had nearly shattered the colony's outer ring. Emergency lights cast a dim red hue over the room, flickering softly as the last generators struggled to keep the systems alive. Outside the reinforced window, black space stretched like a silent ocean, littered with the distant debris of alien ships still burning from the fight. She stood at the foot of the bed, hands shaking as she held a small damp cloth. He was lying there, wrapped in a rough emergency blanket, motionless, his skin pale under the harsh light. For 3 hours he hadn't moved. They'd said he wasn't going to make it through the night. But she couldn't bring herself to leave him. He wasn't just another soldier. He was the reason the colony still had air to breathe. She stepped closer, trying to steady her breath as the quiet hum of failing machines filled the room. She reached out with the cloth, intending only to wipe the grime and soot from his face, to give him the dignity the battlefield had stripped away. But as the cloth brushed his cheek, the blanket shifted. Just slightly, not from the wind, not from a glitching ventilator. It moved as though something underneath had breathed. She froze, heart hammering against her ribs. She waited for it to be a trick of the light, for silence to swallow the moment back up. But then it moved again, a subtle but unmistakable stirring beneath the fabric. The air in the room grew heavier. The scent of burned metal and blood seemed to thicken around her. This wasn't supposed to happen. They'd scanned him after the battle. He was supposed to be unconscious. But something was wrong. She whispered his name, voice trembling, and for the briefest second, his eyelids fluttered. Not fully awake, but as if something deep inside him was listening. A faint hum resonated through the bed frame. She stepped back instinctively, the cloth falling from her hand, hitting the floor with a wet slap. Monitors began to spike, soft beeps turning into steady alarm tones. The lights above flickered, shadows stretching long across the walls. She wasn't alone anymore. Whatever was happening beneath that blanket was no longer just a human heartbeat. Something else was waking up. Something the Galactic Council had sworn didn't exist. Outside the bay, soldiers still moved through the debris-strewn corridors of the station. Nobody noticed the subtle surge of power radiating from the medical wing, a signal so faint only someone who had lived through the first contact wars would have recognized it. She wasn't a soldier. She was a medic. She had seen men die, but she had never seen anything come back like this. She swallowed hard, forcing herself forward. It was him under that blanket. She told herself that over and over again. It was him. It had to be. But deep down, a colder thought lingered. What if it wasn't just him anymore? The alien war had changed many things. The council said they'd wiped the invaders out, said the infection couldn't cross the human genetic line. But the night sky was still scarred with the glow of burned ships and silent beacons, reminders of an enemy humanity didn't fully understand. He had been at the heart of that battle. He had disappeared from the front line for 13 minutes. 13 minutes unaccounted for in a war where seconds meant death. When they found him again, his armor was scorched black, his pulse faint, his eyes wrong. No one wanted to say it, but she had seen the flicker in them before he collapsed. Something was in him. As she leaned closer, the blanket trembled like a living thing. The monitor cracked out a tone that didn't sound like a heartbeat. It was faster, deeper, rhythmic like a second pulse layered beneath his own. She reached for the blanket with shaking fingers, terrified of what she might find but more terrified of doing nothing. Slowly, she peeled it back. His chest rose and fell with shallow, uneven breaths, but beneath his skin, faint black lines glowed like veins threaded with alien light. The hum grew louder. The station lights dimmed. She stumbled back, but before she could scream for help, his hand shot out. It wasn't violent. It wasn't human either. His fingers wrapped around her wrist with inhuman precision, as if every bone and muscle in his body had learned a new language. His eyes snapped open, once brown, now swirling with a faint, silver-black glow that pulsed in time with the lights. For a moment, he didn't seem to see her at all. His gaze was distant, fixed on something beyond the room, something far out in the void. And then, slowly, his grip loosened. His lips moved. "They're still here," he whispered. His voice fractured, like two voices speaking through one throat. She jerked free, stumbling back against the equipment stand. "You're supposed to be sedated," she whispered, but the words felt empty. She could feel it now. The air wasn't just heavy. It was listening. Every system in the bay was reacting to him. Lights dimming, temperature rising, the faint vibration of the floor beneath her boots growing stronger. She turned toward the door to call for security, but before she could reach it, every lock sealed with a soft metallic hiss. The room wasn't just reacting. It was obeying. His breathing grew heavier, rougher, as the alien glow spread through the veins on his chest like roots climbing through soil. She remembered the briefings the Galactic Council had given to the medics about infiltration, about alien signals hiding in human hosts, about what to do if someone came back wrong. But none of those briefings had ever involved someone she cared about. None of them had involved the man who had dragged half her team out of hell during the siege. She couldn't look at him and see a threat, but she also couldn't ignore what was happening to him. The window rattled as the station trembled beneath a distant impact. The Council's outer sensors were picking something up. Her heart sank. The signal he was broadcasting wasn't staying in this room. It was going out, far out, into space, calling to something, calling them back. She dropped to her knees beside him, forcing her shaking hands to press against his shoulders. "Listen to me," she said, her voice breaking but strong enough to cut through the rising hum. "You're still in there. I know you are." His eyes flickered, for a heartbeat brown again, soft and scared like before the war. His lips trembled. "I can't stop it," he whispered. The alien pulse inside him surged like a storm breaking against the walls. Alarms erupted across the station. The distant thud of soldiers running echoed in the halls. But she knew by the time they got here it would be too late. The enemy the Council thought they had erased was already inside their walls. It wasn't a fleet this time. It was a whisper, a pulse, a heartbeat beneath a blanket. And in that heartbeat, humanity's next war had just begun. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more HFY sci-fi stories. Your support helps keep these legends of humanity alive, one heartbeat at a time. The alarms continued to echo down the metal corridors of Outpost 17 as the storm outside deepened. Red lights pulsed through the hallway windows, spilling into the medbay like slow, bleeding heartbeats. The medic's breath came out sharp and shallow as she pressed her back against the wall, watching it, breathe under the trembling light. He lay still, but nothing about him was quiet anymore. The hum beneath his skin had grown stronger, steady, and rhythmic, like an alien machine syncing with the beating of a human heart. The silver-black glow spread slowly along his veins, a creeping network that wrapped around his chest, up his throat, and into his eyes. It wasn't just spreading inside him. It was spreading through the room. The oxygen vents made soft metallic clicks. The monitors flickered as if reacting to something that didn't belong here. The walls themselves felt too still, too attentive, like the entire structure had started to listen. She forced herself forward, every step feeling like she was walking through thick water. "Hey!" she whispered, voice cracking even as she tried to keep it steady. "You can hear me, can't you?" His eyelids twitched at the sound of her voice. That should have comforted her, but it didn't. It only made the fear crawl deeper. When he spoke again, his voice came out as a low rasp, two tones layered together, one human and one that didn't belong to this galaxy. "They're coming." A cold shiver ran down her spine. She didn't need to ask who they were. The Galactic Council had declared them extinct years ago, sealing off their star systems, burning every trace of their world. But deep in the corners of space, soldiers still whispered about them, about the species that had learned how to speak to machines, how to bend structures and ships into their own skin. And now their song was inside this room. She glanced at the door. The security lock still glowed red, sealed from the inside. She didn't activate it. He did. Whatever was waking up inside him was already touching the station's systems. She grabbed a manual override panel, jamming in the emergency keycard, but the console spat out a harsh denial tone. He lay there unmoving, yet every door and lock answered to him. She returned to the bed slowly, trying to keep her panic buried beneath the same calm voice she'd used on dying soldiers. "You're stronger than this," she said. "You're human. You fought them, remember? You came back." For the first time since the blanket stirred, his eyes opened fully. The left one shone human brown. The right was alive with alien silver, like liquid metal swirling under his iris. It wasn't just a glow. It was something alive, watching her from behind his own face. "I didn't come back alone," he whispered. The air pressure dropped. The vents above their heads rattled. A faint, subsonic tone began to vibrate through the med bay, too deep for the ear but heavy enough to press against her chest. She stumbled back, clutching the wall for balance. The emergency lights flickered, and the power in half the room went out. It was happening faster than the council briefings ever described. If the infection reached the station's core, the entire outpost would belong to them within minutes. She forced herself to act. The emergency communicator hung on the far wall, old and analog, untouched by the network. She lunged for it, but before she could grab it, the floor beneath her boots trembled. The lights around the communicator turned blood red. The voice that came from the speakers wasn't human. It wasn't alien either. It was both him and it speaking together. "No one leaves." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Listen to me," she shouted over the rising hum. "If you don't fight this, they'll take everything. The council will burn the outpost to stop it." He flinched. The alien light flickered. For a moment she saw him again. The soldier who had pulled her out of a collapsing corridor months ago. The man who laughed in the mess hall like war couldn't touch him. His human eye softened, and his voice came through. Just his voice. "Run, please." She shook her head hard, tears burning behind her eyes. "Not without you." The ceiling groaned as if something pressed against it from the outside. The hum shifted to a low pulse, like a massive heartbeat somewhere in space answering the signal coming from his body. She realized with growing horror that he wasn't just infected, he was transmitting. Out in the black, someone was listening. Someone was coming. She grabbed the edge of the blanket, pulling it down the rest of the way. His chest was covered in faint, fractal-like markings, glowing circuits made of something neither organic nor metal. They pulsed with every beat of his heart, in rhythm with the signal outside. She pressed her palms against his chest, shaking. "You're still in there. I know you are. Please, fight it." He jerked violently, a raw scream tearing from his throat. The sound wasn't just human. The lights shattered in a burst of white as the station's main power flicked out for a second. The medic bay plunged into darkness, lit only by the alien glow radiating from his veins. It was beautiful and terrifying, like starlight wrapped in a nightmare. She held her ground as his hand shot out again, gripping the bed rail so hard the metal bent. His body convulsed once more, the signal peaking. The station alarms roared to life across every deck. Outside the window, in the void, lights appeared where there should have been none. Not stars. Not council patrols. Ships, dozens of them. Silent, black, waiting. Her breath caught in her throat. The Galactic Council's greatest fear wasn't a fleet. It was a fleet answering a human heartbeat. She turned back to him, tears streaking down her face, voice breaking but clear. "You're not their weapon," she said. "You're ours. You're human." His fingers dug into the rail, the alien light trembling under his skin as if something inside was fighting back. He gasped, voice splitting again. "I can't hold them." "You can?" she said, pressing her forehead against his, her voice soft but strong. "Because humanity doesn't break. It fights back." Something shifted in his gaze. A crack in the alien glow. A heartbeat that wasn't theirs, it was his. But outside, the black ships began to move. The war that had been buried in silence was coming back. And this time it would start here, at a single bed, in a dim room on a forgotten outpost at the edge of space. The storm beyond the station had grown louder, though there was no real storm in space. Just the deep rumble of incoming engines, the low, unnatural vibration of something closing in. The medic bay trembled as though the walls themselves were afraid. She pressed her palms flat against the cold floor, trying to steady her breathing, but the pounding in her chest was louder than the alarms. Outside the reinforced window, dozens of black silhouettes hung in the void, their outlines faint against the stars, their hulls reflecting no light. Alien ships. They didn't need to announce themselves. The silence was the announcement. They were already here. He lay on the bed, still half wrapped in the blanket, his body caught between human warmth and something else. Something that had no business living inside a man. The glow beneath his skin had sharpened, no longer faint or scattered but pulsing in perfect rhythm with the approaching fleet. His breathing had turned steady, too steady, like a machine. But beneath that rhythm, she could see him fighting. His fingers twitched against the sheets, his jaw clenched like someone trapped beneath ice, trying to break through. The door to the medical bay clanked from the outside. For the first time since the lockdown, someone tried to override the seal. She spun around, heart skipping. Security. They must have gotten the alert. Through the small viewport, the faces of two soldiers appeared, helmets still streaked with the dust of the last battle. One of them, a captain she recognized, pounded his fist against the door. "Open it," he shouted. "Medic, what's happening in there?" She scrambled to the control panel and entered the emergency override code. The console blinked red and denied the request. It wasn't locked by her anymore. The system was listening to him. "The controls aren't responding," she shouted through the door, panic sharpening her voice. "The station's linked to him. It's like he's in the network." The captain's face tightened. "Then we blow the door." "No," she shouted before she could stop herself. "If you do that, you'll trigger whatever this is. I think they're connected to him." A sound vibrated through the room then. Not a mechanical noise, not a voice, but something like a song buried under steel and bone. It wasn't coming from the speakers or the vents. It was coming from him, low, resonant, pulling at something beyond the walls. The soldiers outside froze at the sound, eyes widening beneath their visors. The hum deepened, wrapping around the structure like invisible chains. The captain backed away. "What the hell is that?" She turned slowly back toward the bed. His eyes were open again. The human brown of his left iris was almost completely consumed by the silver-black glow. He was no longer whispering, he was broadcasting. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the bones of the outpost itself. He wasn't a man lying in a medical bed anymore. He was a beacon. "Listen to me," she said, forcing the tremor out of her voice. "You're stronger than this. Don't let them use you." For a heartbeat, something shifted in his expression. His human eye flickered back, and his lips moved. "It hurts," he whispered. "They're inside my head. I can feel them crawling through me." His voice cracked at the end, and for that small moment, she saw him. Not the alien glow, not the signal, but the man she had known before the war. She grabbed his hand, clutching it tightly, ignoring the heat pulsing through his skin. "Then fight them. Do you hear me? Fight them like you fought for this station. For us." The hum wavered. The glow stuttered like static caught between frequencies. But then the alien presence pushed back, surging through him like a tide. His back arched against the bed, the glow flaring so bright she had to shield her eyes. The station's lights flickered violently, and somewhere in the corridor outside, metal groaned as pressure systems started to fail. The captain yelled something through the door, but his voice was drowned out by the rising noise. It wasn't just coming from him anymore. It was coming from the ships outside. They had answered. The entire station shook as the alien fleet began moving into formation. Red warning banners flashed across the cracked monitors. "Impact alert. Inbound boarding craft." She stumbled toward the wall panel and pulled down the emergency comm link. The old analog one, hardwired, untouched by digital interference. Static crackled in her ear. "Command, this is Medbay 2, she gasped. "They've arrived. They're using him as a signal. They're locking us down from the inside." "Evacuate," Command barked. "We'll initiate purge if containment fails." Her stomach twisted. Purge. That wasn't a military term for evacuation. It meant they'd blow the entire station out of orbit to keep the infection from spreading. She turned toward him, gripping the comm so tightly it cracked. "They're going to kill you," she whispered. His body convulsed again, the alien presence thrumming through every inch of him. But she saw it, buried beneath the storm. A spark. His human eye burned with something raw and fierce. "Run," he whispered again, voice broken. "No," she said. "If they're coming for you, they're coming for all of us. I'm not leaving." The door behind her exploded in a burst of heat and sparks. The two soldiers forced their way in, rifles raised, visors glowing in the red light. "Step away from him," the captain barked. "He's compromised." She stepped between them and the bed without thinking. "He's fighting it. He's broadcasting to an enemy fleet," the captain shot back. "We don't have time for hope." The deck shook again as the first boarding pods slammed into the lower docking bay. The sirens went from warning to screaming. The captain's finger tightened on the trigger. And in that breathless moment, the entire room went silent. The glow from his body surged out like a shockwave, shattering glass and sending the soldiers sprawling against the wall. The medic hit the floor hard, ears ringing, air knocked from her lungs. When she looked up, the walls of the med bay were covered in moving light, alien symbols crawling like veins. He wasn't just a signal anymore. He was a voice. Outside, the alien ships opened. The boarding began. Humanity's forgotten nightmare had returned. And the one man who should have saved them was now the center of the storm. She dragged herself toward him, blood dripping down her forehead, grabbing his wrist with trembling fingers. "If they're using you," she whispered hoarsely, "then we use you back." For the first time, the glow in his eyes didn't push her away. It answered. Somewhere in the depths of the signal, a human heartbeat thudded louder than the alien hum. It wasn't over, not yet. The war that was supposed to be finished was just beginning again, right there in that small room. And he, broken and burning, was going to choose a side. The blast doors on the lower decks groaned like wounded beasts as the alien boarding craft forced their way into the station. The sound echoed through the structure, rolling through the halls like distant thunder. She gripped the edge of the medical cot as the floor shuddered beneath her, staring at him, at the man she'd once known and the thing he was becoming. His body glowed brighter now, veins carved with silver-black light that pulsed in perfect rhythm with the storm outside. But it wasn't just his body that was changing. The station itself was responding. Lights dimmed, alarms shifted, and the very air felt charged, like a storm gathering strength before the strike. He was no longer just a beacon. He was a bridge. The captain struggled to his feet, one hand gripping his rifle, the other smeared with blood from the earlier blast. "This station is compromised," he barked, trying to steady himself as the bulkhead screamed. "Command's already authorized a purge. If we don't shut him down, they'll blow this place to ash." His voice was cold, clinical, the voice of a soldier who'd already accepted death. She turned to him sharply, shaking her head, rain of sweat and blood streaking down her face. "You shoot him, you kill the only chance we have. He's not just their weapon, he's a way to fight back. I can feel it." The captain's visor glinted in the emergency lights. "Feel it? Medic. In about 5 minutes, there won't be a station left to feel anything." He raised the rifle toward the bed, finger hovering over the trigger. "Whatever he was, he's gone." She stepped between them without thinking. The alien hum in the air grew louder, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "No," she said firmly, her voice shaking but unbroken. "He's still in there. If they can use him to control this station, then so can we. Humanity built this place. It doesn't belong to them." The captain hesitated for a single heartbeat. That heartbeat was enough. The entire station jolted as something outside latched onto it. A boarding clamp the size of a transport ship. The walls groaned, temperature rising as their systems buckled under the invasion. Red lights strobed overhead like a dying pulse. The alien ships weren't here to negotiate. They were here to claim what they'd started decades ago. He sat upright suddenly, as if something pulled him from a nightmare. His eyes snapped open, one burning human, one alive with alien light. His breathing was harsh, uneven, like a man fighting an invisible hand wrapped around his throat. She dropped to her knees beside him. Hey, look at me," she whispered, clutching his shoulders. "You're here. You're still here." His human eye flickered, struggling to focus on her face. "They're inside," he rasped. His voice carried that unnatural echo again, but beneath it, his real voice clawed to be heard. "They're in the walls, in the air. I can feel them crawling through everything." She grabbed his hand, pressing it against her chest. "Then push back. You're human. You've fought worse than this." The captain scoffed, glancing nervously at the door as the sound of metal being torn apart echoed from the lower decks. He's not human anymore, but she ignored him, focusing on the man she knew, the one who had saved lives, who'd laughed in the mess hall, who had a scar above his eyebrow from the first alien skirmish they'd survived together. "They want to use you because they're afraid of us," she whispered fiercely. "Afraid of humanity. That's why they came back in the dark. Through you. But we don't run anymore." Something shifted in his expression. The alien glow in his right eye flared like a flare being suffocated, struggling against the pull. "I can hear them," he breathed. "All of them. They're screaming." Outside, the first wave of alien boarders hit the main corridor. The sound of their movements was not like soldiers. It was like something that slithered and marched at the same time, a sound that dug into the bone. The captain cursed, slamming a fresh cell into his rifle. "They're inside," he muttered, voice tight. "We hold here or we die." The station lighting flickered again, and for a moment, everything went black. In that blackness, the hum stopped, and for a heartbeat, she felt only silence. Then a voice, not hers, not his, slid into the room through the intercom system. Cold, smooth, terrifyingly calm. "He belongs to us." She felt the blood drain from her face. That wasn't a recording. That was the enemy. They weren't just boarding the station. They were inside it. The captain's finger tightened on the trigger. But before he could fire, the man on the bed grabbed the barrel with inhuman speed. The metal groaned under the pressure of his grip, the alien light crawling up his arm like living fire. The captain's visor reflected the impossible glow. "He's turning," the captain hissed. But the medic saw something different. In his human eye, buried deep beneath all the light, there was something fierce, a defiance that wasn't alien. "No," she whispered, pressing her hand over his. "He's fighting." And then it happened. A blast of energy rippled out from him like a shockwave, slamming against the walls, bending the floor plates. The soldiers outside screamed as the boarding corridor twisted under the pressure, alien metal and human steel colliding. It wasn't a controlled pulse. It was raw, instinctive, like a wounded animal lashing out. But it bought them a few precious seconds. The captain stumbled backward, shouting over the roar. "He'll bring this place down." She didn't move away. She knelt in the storm, clutching his glowing hand like an anchor. "Then we'll bring it down together." The alien boarders reached the medbay door. It shuddered under their claws, sharp, wet, and mechanical. She could hear their breathing through the seams, a chorus of whispers and growls. The captain planted himself by the entrance, rifle raised. "You better be right about him," he growled. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. He was already moving. He swung his legs off the bed, every motion a battle against the thing trying to consume him. Sweat poured down his forehead, veins burning with light, but he stood. And when he did, the station responded, not to them, not to the aliens, but to him. The ceiling lights blazed to life. Doors along the corridor slammed shut, locking like jaws. Turrets, dormant since the first war, powered up with a low, threatening hum. The aliens outside screeched, a sound like metal tearing through flesh. The captain lowered his rifle slowly, stunned. What the hell is he doing? She stared at the man she once thought was lost. He's not letting them win. The medbay door split open with a shriek, and the first alien came through. a shape of slick black armor and too many limbs, its movements both fluid and jagged. The captain opened fire, bullets tearing into its hide, but it kept coming. Another followed, then another, but he didn't step back. The glow inside him surged, a storm made flesh. He raised his hand and the station obeyed. The floor itself shifted beneath the intruders, plating cracking open like jaws. The aliens screamed as magnetic pulses ripped through their armor. For the first time since the war began, the monsters who came in silence were thrown back. And through it all, she held his gaze. For the first time, she saw no fear in his eyes, only fire. Outside, the fleet above the outpost began to realign. The enemy had expected a beacon, a weapon they could use. What they found instead was something far more dangerous. A human who refused to break. The medbay floor was slick with rainwater that had leaked in through shattered vents, mixed with alien ichor from the few borders they had already cut down. The air was heavy and wet, thick with the scent of scorched metal and something far worse, the oily, metallic tang that always accompanied the invaders. Their screams echoed down the dark corridor like wind howling through broken hulls, sharp and inhuman, as wave after wave of black-armored creatures pushed deeper into the station. Their numbers weren't thinning. They were increasing. They hadn't just sent a small team. They were taking back what they believed belonged to them. He stood at the center of the room now, breathing hard, bare feet planted in the water, the silver-black light burning through his veins like a living storm. The station itself pulsed with him, every flicker of the lights matching his heartbeat, every rumble in the hull bending to his will. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was the battlefield, and they wanted their weapon back. The captain slammed a fresh power cell into his rifle and took up position near the doorway, where alien claws scratched against the steel. "We can't hold this forever," he hissed. "Command's going to purge the outpost. I don't care what tricks your miracle boy can pull. When they give the order, this place burns." She was crouched beside the man, her fingers still wrapped around his arm, grounding him to what little humanity he had left. His eyes flickered between human brown and alien silver. A storm locked behind his gaze. "They won't have to," she said. Her voice was shaking, but the fire in it was real. "He's stronger than them. He can turn this." The captain barked out a laugh that had no humor in it. "Turn this? Medic, you're talking about fighting a fleet with one man who's halfway to being their puppet." She didn't look at the captain. She looked at him. "Not their puppet," she whispered. "Their mistake." The door buckled inward under the weight of claws and shrieking armor. The creatures weren't mindless drones. They were coordinated, fast, and cruel. Their shapes were both mechanical and alive, bodies that twisted like shadow wrapped in steel. One final slam and the door burst open in a spray of sparks. The first of the aliens crawled in, low and fast, eyes burning with the same silver light that glowed in his veins. It lunged at the captain. He fired point blank, the pulse round ripping through its chest. But even as it fell, two more took its place. He raised his hand and the world shuddered. A wave of force erupted outward from his body, smashing the front line of boarders against the corridor walls like dolls made of glass. Armor cracked. Bones broke. The entire hallway shook as metal plates twisted under an unseen hand. The lights in the ceiling burst like stars going out. For a heartbeat, even the aliens hesitated. The captain stumbled back, staring at him wide-eyed. "What the hell are you?" He didn't answer. His jaw was clenched tight, muscles straining as though holding back an avalanche. She stood, stepping in close, her hand pressing against his chest where the alien circuits burned brightest. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't let them pull you under." More aliens poured through the corridor, climbing over the wreckage of their own dead, shrieking in rage. The captain opened fire again, but for every one that fell, two more came. One of them vaulted over the barricade and tackled him to the floor, its claws digging through armor plating like butter. She screamed, snatching the captain's fallen sidearm and firing 3 shots into the creature's skull. Collapsed in a twitching heap, but they were being overrun. She could see it in the captain's movements, in the way the walls shuddered with every impact. And then something changed. His breathing steadied. The flickering in his eyes faded into a steady glow. Not alien, not human, but something balanced between both. He reached out with one hand, fingers spread wide. The entire station responded. The ceiling split open like a living thing, cables snaking down like veins. The floor panels shifted beneath the aliens' feet, twisting their perfect formation into chaos. Turrets that had been dead for years powered up with a deep, bone-rattling hum, their barrels glowing. He closed his fist slowly, and a dozen guns fired in unison. The corridor filled with light and thunder as alien bodies were torn apart. The smell of burning metal filled the air. The captain stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. "He's controlling it," he whispered. "He's controlling the station." She moved closer, her voice steady despite the roar of battle. "Not controlling," she said. "Fighting back." But it wasn't without cost. His skin was pale now, sweat rolling down his face, blood trickling from his nose. His human voice was barely a whisper beneath the storm in his veins. "I can't hold it forever," he rasped. "They're pulling at me, trying to drag me back." Outside, through the cracked observation window, the alien fleet shifted. The black ships were aligning into attack formation, their engines burning cold blue against the void. If they couldn't take him alive, they would burn him out of existence. One ship, larger than the rest, moved closer to the outpost, carried their command, their leader. The captain checked the ammo in his weapon, already knowing it wouldn't be enough. "We're out of time." She turned to him, gripping his hand tighter. "Then we end this now." The glow beneath his skin flared brighter, hot enough to make the air ripple around him. He raised his hands, and for the first time the fleet hesitated. The outpost's old cannons, silent relics of a war the council swore was over, roared to life. Massive railguns emerged from their housing like giants waking from a long sleep, targeting the black ships outside. The aliens answered with their own weapons, beams of light slashing across the void. The entire station shook violently as the first volley hit. Panels burst. Flames ripped through the hallway. Aliens screamed as the turrets cut them down. But more were coming. Always more. He staggered forward, blood dripping from his mouth, but his steps were steady. He looked at the captain, at her, at the burning corridor ahead. "Get the civilians to the escape pods," he said, his voice low and calm, more human than it had been since this began. "This ends here." She grabbed his arm. "You won't survive." He looked down at her with that same quiet smile he'd worn the night he'd saved her life for the first time. "Maybe not, but they won't win either." The captain hesitated, then nodded and disappeared down the hall to secure the evacuation routes. She stayed behind. She wouldn't leave him again. The alien leader's voice came through the comm systems, a sound like metal grinding on bone. "You are ours. You are the end of them." But his reply wasn't fear. It was a whisper laced with steel. "No, I'm the reason they survive." He stretched his arms outward, and the station answered. The turrets roared, the railguns screamed, and the old bones of Outpost 17 came alive like a sleeping giant refusing to die. The alien fleet responded with fury, the sky lighting up in a storm of fire. And in the middle of it all, a single human stood, burning like a star. He was no longer their weapon. He was humanity's blade. And this night, the galaxy would remember that even in the darkest corners, humanity does not kneel. Humanity fights back. The void outside Outpost 17 burned with fire and light. Railguns thundered from the station's hull like the roars of an awakening beast, hurling spears of kinetic fury into the alien fleet. Their ships answered with beams of cold blue energy that carved through the darkness like knives, slamming against the station's aging shields, shaking every bolt, every plate, every wall. Inside the medbay, the tremors felt like the heartbeat of a dying world, a steady drum that whispered a single truth. This was the last stand. He stood at the center of the chaos, his bare feet planted on the wet metal floor, blood dripping slowly down his chin, each drop glowing faintly with the same silver-black light that burned through his veins. His breathing was shallow but steady now, his hands raised slightly at his sides, fingers curled like a conductor guiding a storm. The station no longer resisted him. It had surrendered itself completely. He was its nervous system, its pulse, its rage. And outside, the enemy fleet was learning that the weapon they had created no longer belonged to them. She stood a few steps behind him, her hands trembling but her eyes locked on him, refusing to look away even as the medbay ceiling cracked and lights burst from the impact of another strike. The captain's voice echoed over the comm system, sharp and desperate. Evacuation almost complete. But the fleet isn't backing off, they're preparing a final strike. That main ship, it's charging something big. Her heart clenched. How long? 3 minutes, came the reply, grim and flat. If they fire that thing, there won't be a station left. She looked at him, at the man who wasn't just a man anymore. His jaw was tight, the light inside him flickering like a torch in the wind. They're going to destroy this place, she whispered. Even if they can't take you, they'll bury you. He didn't turn to face her, but she saw his shoulders rise and fall slowly. Then they'll have to bury me with fire. The corridor outside the medbay erupted again as another wave of aliens burst through the smoke. The captain and the few remaining soldiers opened fire, pulse rifles spitting streaks of light down the narrow hallway. Screams echoed as both sides clashed in a brutal, close-quarters struggle. But then the walls themselves came alive. The plating shifted and snapped like a predator's jaws, crushing the intruders, tearing them apart before they could even raise their blades. The soldiers stared in stunned silence. He hadn't even moved. The station had done it for him. She took a step forward, her boots splashing through the pooling water. "You're burning yourself out," she said softly. "I can see it. You can't hold this forever." Finally, he turned. His face was pale, but his eyes were alive, half human, half alien storm, but burning with something neither side could ever create. "Will, I don't need forever," he said. "I just need to hold long enough to end this." The sound came then, a low, rising frequency that shook every molecule in the air. The alien command ship had finished charging. Through the cracked medbay window, the weapon could be seen forming on its prow. A beam of pure white energy wrapped in blue flame, pulsing like a star preparing to explode. One shot, that's all it would take. The captain's voice cut through the static. "Whatever you're going to do it now." The medbay doors slammed shut on their own, sealing the room with a heavy, echoing clang. She didn't flinch. She knew what he was about to do. "If you do this," she whispered, "you won't come back." He tilted his head slightly, giving her a faint smile. The same quiet, reckless smile that had once made her believe they could survive anything. "I already didn't." The alien light inside him surged, veins flaring like rivers of silver fire. The floor beneath him cracked with a thunderous groan as the station's power grid redirected itself, every last ounce of energy flowing into him. The lights went dark. The engines fell silent. For a heartbeat, the entire outpost became still. And then the pulse began. It started as a vibration beneath their feet, low and steady. Then it grew louder, a deep hum that crawled up the walls and into the bones of every person left on the station. He lifted both hands slowly, palms open toward the void. The station responded like it had been waiting centuries for this command. Railguns realigned, massive capacitors ignited, plasma conduits burned white-hot. The alien fleet opened fire. Dozens of blue beams lanced through space, ripping toward the outpost. But they didn't hit. The beams twisted, their trajectories bending as if pulled by an invisible current. The entire sky around the outpost shimmered with a strange, shifting field, an energy that wasn't entirely human or alien, but something new. The alien fleet's weapons faltered, scattered, broke apart like waves crashing against a rock. She stumbled back, unable to breathe. He was rewriting the battle in real time. The alien command ship roared, its weapons surging brighter. They were pouring everything into this last shot. He whispered something then, not to her, not to them, but to the void itself. "I'm not your vessel. I'm your end." And then he let go. The pulse ripped through the station like a living thing, shooting outward into space in every direction. A blinding ring of silver-white energy that split the darkness in two. The alien fleet convulsed as the pulse tore through their systems, bypassing armor, shorting every command link they relied on. Their ships twisted violently, engines shattering, hulls cracking. One by one, the black silhouettes that had once blotted out the stars began to break apart, burning like dying embers. The alien command ship tried to fire its superweapon. It never got the chance. The pulse folded the beam back on itself, consuming the ship in a blinding explosion that lit up the void like a newborn sun. The shockwaves slammed against the station, tearing panels loose, smashing windows. She fell to her knees, hands over her head, screaming against the roar. And then silence. A silence so deep it made the blood in her ears thunder. She opened her eyes slowly. The stars were back. The fleet was gone. Only drifting wreckage remained, glowing faintly against the black canvas of space. But in the center of the medbay he was still standing, barely. The glow in his veins was fading, flickering like a dying flame. She crawled to him, hands shaking, catching him just as his legs gave out. He collapsed against her, breath shallow, eyes dim but still warm. "You stayed," he whispered, his voice no longer two but one. "Of course I did," she whispered back, pressing her forehead against his. "Someone had to remind you who you are." A faint laugh escaped him, soft and broken. The captain's voice came through the calm, rough and quiet now. "It's over. They're gone. The Council is already detecting the debris field from orbit. Whatever he did, he just saved us all." She held him tighter as the station's emergency lights flickered weakly back to life. His eyes were half closed, but for the first time, there was peace in them. Not human, not alien, just him. The war they thought was buried had clawed its way back from the dark. But so had something else, something older, something harder to kill than any fleet. Humanity's will, its refusal to kneel. And on that broken, burning outpost, a single man had reminded the galaxy that even in the blackest night, humanity does not fade. "To fights," she whispered against his ear, soft as the hum of the stars returning. "We're still here." And as the last sparks of the battle drifted away into space, the galaxy finally remembered why it had once feared the sound of a human heartbeat. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more HFY sci-fi stories. Your support keeps humanity's legends alive.